Hi everyone, BritSimon here. I'm coming to you with an interesting update for the UK GB lawsuit. So if you're interested in hearing some interesting update about that case, please do listen in. So the lawsuit is going to go ahead for sure. I've asked Curtis to proceed with the paperwork, etc. He's created a complaint. I've sent him a statement or affidavit which lays out, the evidence that I personally have seen over the last year or so, and hopefully between those things, there's enough for us to do a filing to initiate this lawsuit. So we're going to do that. But some interesting information came my way just over the last couple of days, which makes it very clear to me how this whole thing has happened. So let me show you a couple of things, and I think you're going to enjoy this because to me, this just makes the case, the lawsuit, kind of an open and shut case, or a slam dunk, as they would say in America. So I'm going to show you a couple of documents. First of all, this is the instructions from DV25, right? In DV25, we saw in the country list that the UK and its dependent territories is now eligible for DV25. There were no other changes in eligibility from the previous year. Okay, so you can imagine their system needs somehow someone to update, which are the eligible countries. So somebody had to go into a system somewhere and add the UK and dependent territories in that list so that the system could select entries from that country, right? Up to now, the hypothesis has been that somebody didn't do that. And if they didn't do that in DV25, it's likely they also didn't do that in DV26. So if we then look at the DV26 instructions, we can see here an interesting update or an interesting change for DV26, which I hadn't quite thought of, and now I've seen some proof about. Okay. It says, with the exception of Cuba, which is not eligible for DV26, there were no other changes in eligibility from the previous year, meaning the UK is still eligible because it was on the DV25 instructions, and Cuba is now not eligible. Okay, so again, somebody had to go in for DV26 and they had to make Cuba ineligible for DV26. So there should be no winners from DV26, right? That's what that means. So let me just show you then this little snippet of interesting information. This is a selectee letter. And let me make this bigger. There we go. Now I have an unredacted copy of this letter. This is a selectee letter written in Spanish, of course, to somebody who lives in Cuba, but more importantly, is chargeable to Cuba. That shouldn't happen. That shouldn't exist. That's a DV26 winner from Cuba. Now I know of this person. She was born in Cuba and chargeable to Cuba, according to this. Now it's very clear because this shouldn't exist. It's very clear what they've done wrong. Okay, so there was obviously a need to change the eligible countries list in DV25, and there was another need to change that list in DV26. So someone in the government has a job to do that. It's somebody's responsibility to do that, and they simply didn't do that. They didn't do that in DV25, and because we now know that Cuba is there as selectees in DV26, they also didn't do it in DV26. Okay, so they made mistakes 2 years in a row. And the government being the government, they're a bunch of dopey Muppets. They're going to continue making this mistake until we sue them into understanding what their job should be. And so this is why it's important that the GB lawsuit goes ahead, because UK is going to be eligible again in DV27, according to our calculations, my calculations on the numbers, that show whether a country should be eligible or not. UK is going to be eligible again in DV27. And again, they need to fix this. So we now have this bizarre situation where there are, in South America, there are selectees from Cuba in DV26. That shouldn't exist. Those people shouldn't have an opportunity to process those cases. And in fact, I mean, this is a separate issue, but you could argue that that has disadvantaged some people in South America that were not selected because they cut off the numbers. Now we'll have to wait and see what the numbers are for DV26 to see whether that is even a sort of a concern. But in DV25, the last year that that Cuba was eligible, more than half of the selectees came from Cuba. So making Cuba ineligible was a pretty big deal, a pretty big blow to the region in a sense, if you're from Cuba, but a very big plus to the region if you're not from Cuba. You had a much higher chance of selection, or so you would think. And you know, but it didn't work out that way because the government have done that wrong. Okay, so there is another potential argument to be had there, and I don't know how they're going to fix that one. But I'm more concerned on the GB lawsuit side, and this is evidence that we will use in the GB lawsuit to demonstrate that we understand and we know how they've screwed up. We've got evidence they've screwed up both years, and you know they need to put it right for the GB entries. Okay. So I thought you'd enjoy this little update. Like I say, it basically means that we have, you know, a bit of a slam dunk lawsuit. The lawsuit will win. You know, win insofar as we will be proven to be correct. The next thing will be, what's the remedy? The remedy for the UK entries is, you know, it's pretty clear to me. There's a couple of ways to do it. Depending on how they've performed the draw and when they make the UK entries ineligible. I don't think we need, I'm 100% sure we don't need to throw away the results from DV26 for any of the other countries because of the GB lawsuit. The South America region thing is another concern. That's a different question. And I'm not quite sure how that one should go at this point. It depends how many people they have selected in that region as to whether there's a reasonable chance that more people would have been selected naturally. Cuba had very high entry numbers compared to the rest of the region, hence why they got about half of the selectees in 2025. But if they were made ineligible, the only people from Cuba that entered were people that didn't read the instructions and thought Cuba was still eligible when in fact it wasn't. That would be that would have reduced the number of entries anyway. So I don't know how big a problem this was from the point of view of that region and how invalid the DV26 selection was from you know, from that point of view. To be honest, they need to fix that somehow. I don't quite know at the moment, but I want to stay focused on the GB entries, which I'm hoping we can do something in time for DV25. Maybe we're short of time to do that, but for DV26, I think there is ample time to fix this for DV26 winners or selectees rather to be chosen from the UK. There's ample time to fix that for DV26 for sure. So lawsuits going ahead. I still have. In fact, I'll put below the the video here on YouTube. I'll put the link for the form. There's a form where I'm collecting information about your entries. I would still like to get more entries. The question of whether there should be more named plaintiffs is not 100% decided yet. We actually don't need named plaintiffs in a sense, in that the people that are represented on the lawsuit are not the only people that we expect to get fixed by this lawsuit. We expect everybody to be treated you know, correctly from the UK entries, regardless of whether they're on the lawsuit or not, right? It's for everybody. This lawsuit is to protect everybody's rights, not just the few people that have given me their information and so on. So So please help me to support support you all and everybody else that entered from the UK to get the fair chance by filling in that information on the form that is going to be below. And sorry to ask again, but if any of you still are in a position where you haven't donated to the lawsuit fund, the war chest, whatever you want to call it, if you haven't donated and you'd like to donate to help towards this, please do so. That would be helpful. I'm going ahead with the lawsuit anyway. It's just a matter of how much money I put in my, from my own back pocket, basically. So if you can support that through the GoFundMe link, which I'll put below the YouTube, that also would be appreciated. But regardless, at this point, we've had very good, very kind and very generous contributions towards that cost, which has reduced my expense or my end of it considerably. So I very much appreciated that. But I'll still, at this point, I'll still have to pick up a fairly big bill. And I'd rather not, if I could avoid that. If a few more of you could see a way to donating, that would be awesome. Thank you. Anyway, just thought you'd enjoy the update. And you're not going mad. If you thought that something was wrong, you're absolutely right. Something is wrong, and we've pretty much proven it at this point. We just now have to go through the motions of the lawsuit in order to set things right and to get control of the process, because that's actually what I would like to achieve, is that we have, with some level of transparency, we're able to control what happens next and control the remedy. And as I say, I think I've explained before, there's a couple of ways that that we can help the government, shall we say, remedy this situation in a satisfactory way. All right, everybody. Thanks then. Please do subscribe to the channel and give me a thumbs up on this video, and I'd be interested to hearing any comments from any of you on this point. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.